Hello, librarians and archivists at Baptist institutions. Thanks for having me talk to you guys at the 2021 ALABI meeting. My name is Catherine Wright. I am a book and paper conservator in private practice in Macon, Georgia. I was, until January of this year, a faculty archivist at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. So I'm going to use my experience in these two fields, archives and conservation, to kind of maybe introduce you to, if you don't know about these difficult types of media that don't respond well to basic aqueous treatments that you guys may have learned in workshops or standard storage considerations that I feel like as a conservator might not be covered. These are concerns you guys might not even know to be aware of. And so I'm just going to make up a bunch of fake documents and then show you how you can ruin them by ruining them. And I will talk my way through this for you guys. And then at the end, a couple of years ago or a few years ago, I gave a talk for you guys that was like, what to look for in a conservator, how to talk to a conservator. And bonus content at the end of this video, I will briefly be telling you how not to talk to a conservator. So I've had some interesting interactions with institutions and that you guys work at institutions. And so I just kind of thought I would mention that at the end to save you some potential grief in the future. And so you can find resources that I'm using for this talk, as well as other great resources related to this in the description down below. And furthermore, if you've already heard about the media, like I'm talking about at the minute, you can actually go flip through on the bar at the bottom of this video, and it will highlight different chapters that I've made, so you don't have to sit through anything where you're like, I already know about that. And I like all of you guys, so you guys do know that you can always email me with questions that you have about your collections. If you see something where you're like, I don't know what this is, or should I be concerned about this, or I only have one of these, what do I do with it? How do I store it? Any questions like that, you can definitely reach out to me. I'll give you my 2 cents or try to direct you to somebody else who can help you better. And so I'm also going to put my email address down in the description just for you guys to use, okay? All right, guys, the first common problematic archival media item I'm going to talk about today is copy pencil. I went on eBay and bought a pack of copy pencils to use today for these demos. So a quick history on the copy pencil. It was developed in the late 1870s, and it is graphite combined with a dye, which is what makes it able to be copied. And the dye is usually a methyl violet, although I read it could be blue, red, black, green, or a combo. I've only seen violet or purple in the wild, but be aware if it is a color, you probably need to test it. So the problems are that it looks like graphite. It often has a purple tint to it. And so if you see that, you just need to be aware and probably just assume that it is copy pencil, because the dye is soluble in water and alcohol. It's susceptible to UV, so it will fade. It oxidizes, and it is susceptible to pH shifts, although that's kind of more of a conservator problem. So I'm briefly going to demo how copy pencil worked. So it was dampened and then pressed, either in a nipping type press, which I'm using, or in a book. And so they would wet out thin paper that you can read through and then press it into the dye, and that dye would transmit through the paper, and then it could be read. The good news is that the actual copy of the original does not look like graphite. It just looks like purple dye. So if you have a book, they were often used in like copy books for outgoing correspondence. If you have a book that is all purple dye or purple ink looking, and you're like, this looks really weird, you may want to fast track that if you care about it for digitization, because it is highly susceptible to water and bleeding if it were to get wet. So just, you might want to think about that. Copy pencil was a precursor to the ballpoint pen. It was considered more permanent via erasure and abrasion, and more convenient than dipping a fountain pen repeatedly in ink. All right, so let's move on to how to test for copy pencil. And I'm going to write you another note using copy pencil, and then we are going to show you how to test for it. So if you had a note that was folded up in a book, or you think it's a receipt, or you're pretty sure it's not super important, but you would like to unfold it, but to unfold it, you feel like you need to humidify it, I would advocate for getting a little piece of Mylar so you're not accidentally getting, you know, both sides of the folded item wet, getting a tiny white synthetic bristle brush like the one I have here, and a tiny bit of water. I like to blot it on the back of my hand to really reduce the amount of moisture that I get on the item. I take a tiny piece of blotter. You guys have probably done media testing like this. And then you can either look at, I like the white brush bristles because you can actually see the media transfer onto them, or you can see it on the blotter, or sometimes just the item itself. In this case, it kind of ran a little bit on all three. So now I'm going to fold this up and I'm going to really smush it flat like it's found in a book. And I am going to throw it in a humidification chamber later in this demo. All right, so now I'm going to write another note in artist pencils. So if you have other, it looks like pencil, but you're like, oh, it's just like kids colored pencil. These may or may not be colored pencil. They don't say that they're watercolor pencil. Watercolor pencils are a thing. They're exactly what they sound like. When you get them wet, they kind of can turn into watercolor looking media. And so they're designed to be used with water because they run. These are just like artist colored pencils, sort of. I don't think they're designed necessarily to run when they're wet. Maybe they are. My point to you is if it's colored pencil, don't assume it's like Crayola and not going to run. You should test anything really at all that you care about if you're going to do humidification. But you should definitely test your colored graphite-esque medias. All right, so I'm going to quickly run through testing all of these with my tiny brush and my blotter paper and my water. And the point of testing more aggressively than you would think is that you want to know the point at which the media is going to transfer or run. So I would rather have one tiny splotch than a whole messed up document that can't be fixed, if that makes sense. So don't be afraid to semi-aggressively test your media, because like this yellow here really runs, and you just want to know the point at which it will run. It's okay to make it do that. I promise. It's really okay. If you take it to a conservator, they're probably going to do the same thing. So I will say I pick a spot where if it runs, it is not going to confuse a reader in the future or be kind of overly like obvious. So like dots on eyes, I don't test those. I don't want those to run everywhere, that kind of thing. I usually pick just a random spot that doesn't, to me, draw the eye. All right, so I have my humidification chamber going, my two folded notes, the colored pencil and the copy pencil. And then on the left side, I just have the note I wrote in graphite and copy pencil, just so I can humidify some graphite and show you that it's okay. All right, so now it's humidified, and I'm going to open my folded notes to simulate showing you the transfer in humidity. So at the folds, there's transfer. So that's, to me, like, yes, it is a change. It is permanent. But if this is something where you're like fairly certain that this document that you found in a book that's folded up isn't a big deal, you're just checking to make sure, like, that amount of transfer, like, isn't the worst thing in the world. But if you tested your media to start with, you could have either been like, oh, it's copy pencil, I'm going to take it to a conservator, or it's copy pencil, I'm going to open this dry, and if the paper breaks, I'm just going to put it in Mylar because I don't want to risk condensation, especially in the humidification chamber. Like if you're running one and the AC kicks on and you get condensation, it can drip on your items. It happens. And that would be a level of moisture that would be very problematic. All right, so now I'm simulating a disaster in my humidification chamber. And I am going to demonstrate right here why these are problematic. So I actually picked apparently a copy pencil that doesn't run everywhere. There are some copy pencils, some formulas that run everywhere. However, in a salvage situation, as I've demonstrated with the colored artist pencils here, it is not necessarily the water, it is that the water loosens the bond with the paper and it smears. So if you have any abrasion or contact with the media when it's wet, it can really run. All right, so now I'm going to show you the before and after on my note that was all copy pencil. You can see the wet part is purple, purple, and the dry part still looks like purplish graphite. Graphite just looks like graphite. And I'm going to show you the run on the artist colors, wet versus dry. All right, so that was how humidification and wet can impact copy and art pencils. All right, so now we're going to explore what happens if you have a water event and copy pencil items or documents are in with other documents in folders in an archival box. All right, so I have 3 folders that I have set up. So the first folder is called No Interleaving, and it's exactly what it sounds like. I've created 3 fake documents. The first one has only graphite, the second one has only copy pencil, and the third one has only graphite. All right, so the second folder is called With Interleaving. We have a document that's graphite, we have a piece of interleaving paper, we have a copy pencil document, another piece of interleaving paper, and then a third document that is only graphite, just like the first one. So this interleaving paper doesn't have anything on it, it is just blank paper. And then I made one document that is copy pencil that's foldered individually. All right, so we are going to take these folders, which were, they're regular archival folders that you would use. This is a metal edge box that has seen better days. Daniel let me have these items because they have all been used by Mercer and written on in various inks. All right, I've put some tiles in there to simulate the box being completely full. And now I have a tray of water. And then we have a box sitting in water. So I set this up at 5:30 p.m. and I came back the next morning at 10:30 a.m. and unboxed and unfolded these items to simulate an overnight water event where either water is running or sitting and your box is just sitting in water. All right, so I take out my 3 folders, I play the cleanup game, and now I am going to unfold her and we can take a look at what the copy pencil has done in these folders. All right, so no interleaving is first. These are just 3, I'm going to call them naked documents that are folded together. And the middle one, if you can remember, has the copy pencil. But the first document and the third document do not have copy pencil. They were just regular graphite. All right, so let's take a look. The first document and the third document, there and there, have purple on them. And so that dye has bled from the second document, which to me, if you have a water event and you have copy pencil, that's acceptable loss, period. It's going to run, you can't fix it. And that's why I advocate for digitizing your copy pencil documents if they are precious to your archive. Go ahead and think about getting them kind of to the front of the line. All right, so now we have folder 2, and this is with interleaving. This one turned out weirder than I thought because, as you'll see, the interleaving paper in this folder actually has no copy pencil on it at all. And I'm going to link to you what I used for this interleaving paper because it's actually magical. It is completely white. It should not be white. It should have purple on it. because the with interleaving document got very wet and it should have bled onto the interleaving paper, but it didn't. So that's magic, and I love it. So first document and third document, we're going to do a side-by-side comparison of the two folders, with and without interleaving. So the point of this is not to keep you guys up at night. The point is maybe you might want to alter your intake processing to include some interleaving. If you're like, oh, that is purple pencil, that's getting a piece of paper shoved on either side of it. I think that's reasonable, especially if it is in a folder with things that you do not want to have a permanent dye stain on. And here's the third one. I folded it separately to see if it would bleed through a folder. And the answer is barely, so I wouldn't really worry about it. So either interleaving or foldering it alone, either one works just fine, in my opinion. So yeah, don't go back through everything you own, but maybe go through if you have a manuscript collection that's like super precious or personal papers collection that's super important. And if you have any purple looking pencil, you might want to consider adding some interleaving paper just in case. All right, so now for an slightly off topic demo. So I often see friable media, which is, can be many things, but it's media that doesn't adhere well to paper. It tends to sit on the surface. So this includes pastels, charcoal, chalk, those kinds of things that are housed in frames that have plexiglass, and plexi is susceptible to static electricity. So you're like, but is it really that much? And the answer is no, but over years and years and years and years and years and decades, actually yes. So you will get, if you leave a piece of art that is pastel or chalk and charcoal housed in a plexiglass fronted frame, and people walk by it all the time and they're wearing sweaters, or like you basically static, just it exists. People running vacuums in the archive, that kind of thing. It's not one big thing. It's like by 1,000 cuts. So I'm going to demo for you guys using a piece of my fine art that I create, how this happens and why you should not house in plexi and certainly not mylar for your friable media. So basically, if it can be smeared, don't put it in plexi, or certainly not mylar. All right, so I have created this piece of fine art for you guys. And so, ta-da, I'm going to put that mess away. I'm getting my tiles out. This is just to give me an approximate depth. That's the depth of the tiles. Approximate depth for my plexi, which I am setting on top right now. My apologies for the ring light reflection. I'm now going to take a fleece blanket and rub the daylights out of this. And yes, it is flopping around under the plexi. If I had to do the demo over again, I would take some tape and tape it down, but I didn't think of that. So unwilling to create yet another masterpiece. My creativity was exhausted. So yeah, it's flopping around. It wouldn't normally do that in real life. So rub, lots of static. All right, so I'm gonna set that aside. I'm gonna take blue painter's tape and mark out like the boundaries of my fine art so we know where to look for the transfer. Then I am going to lift up my plexi, move my tiles, and get a piece of just plain white paper. Lay it on top of the art, and we can see what has transferred. It's mostly the black, but I've seen like basically like a ghost image of the piece of art on the plexi in the frame. Like it looks like dust, and then you kind of look from an angle and you're like, oh wow, that is the art, and it is being removed from the piece. And then I had to, after all the demos, clean basically the entire lab so I didn't get dye or pastel or anything else on any of my clients' stuff. So I really scrubbed down the lab several times to get rid of that. And now I am done with my demos, and you can hear my story about how not to talk to a conservator. All right, and as I mentioned in the intro, here is a little bonus material for how probably to not contact a conservator who you're interested in hiring to do work for your institution. So I printed out the email, so you're going to hear paper rattling, and then you get to watch me read. I have cut out all of the identifying information about this institution because that would be extra rude of me to leave that in. But you hopefully will get a sense of why this is not the best way, probably, to, and this is just my opinion, try to recruit a private practice conservator to work for you. This person says, "Hi, Catherine. I am reaching out to inquire about conserving a couple of items." This person tells me what these 2 items are. "The institution wants to exhibit them in our upcoming exhibition opening this August. Please find details and images about the 2 items attached. We would need to have the work completed no later than August 1st. Thanks for letting me know if this conservation project is of interest. If so, please provide a quote and potential days to pick them up from the institution. I am happy to make them available in person if needed prior to your decision. Look forward to hearing back." Then this person signs it. Okay, I received this email on May 23rd. An August 1 deadline is close. I'm booked up through September, and so you probably need more than a couple months. Fine. Maybe there's a conservator who has a different timeline or is willing to work overtime, nights and weekends to get this project done for the right price. Perfectly fine. This institution is in Atlanta. I am in Macon. Macon is 90 minutes away from Atlanta. I charge for travel. I charge hourly and mileage at this juncture because if I'm sitting in traffic, I'm not working on books making money. I charge less because I'm just sitting in traffic and I'm not like using my expertise, but it's still time that I could spend working. And so there's no mention of like, we would love to pay you for your time to come up here, because a 90-minute like one way in Atlanta with Atlanta traffic, it's never 90 minutes. It's at least a couple hours. And let's see what else was in here. Oh, so the attachments in this email are photos of the books, which is great. Please send photos. The other attachments in this email are 2 documents, like screenshots that have been clipped, and they are condition description of the items and treatment proposals for these items. Those were written by another conservator. The person sending this email is an archivist at this institution. And that's fine to say, we contacted another conservator and they're outside our budget, but since you can't see these items in person, in this email with the pictures, we have also attached the other conservators write up in it. Like, that's not addressed. It's just like, it sounds like the archivist is trying to tell me that they wrote these 2 documents and they did not. And it's strange. I mean, it's like if you were going to get a classic car restored and you went to a restorer and they did a full workup with like all, the prices and their names at the top and everything. And this is what we would do. And the other thing is that first shop probably had a conversation with you about what you want to do with that car. Do you want your kids to inherit it? Are you just restoring it to sell it for a profit? Do you want to take it off-road? What are you doing with the car? Conservators want to know, what are you doing with these? So I didn't have that conversation. That was not included in this email. If I was interested in meeting this timeline, I would certainly follow up and ask, are you having a donor event where an employee is showing off these items and needs to open and close these books? Are you displaying them open? What are your goals for these items? And I didn't get to have that conversation. So it would be like taking that list of like, this car needs the transmission and, bead blasted or sandblasted, whatever, new paint, all this stuff, right? It would be like if a car shop worked that up for you and then you clipped off like all of their identifying information and the price, and you gave it to another auto restorer and you were like, hey, I need you to do this. It was weird. I felt like it was weird. I know they're just trying to get it done, but the fact that there was no acknowledgement that hey, we contacted somebody else and it didn't work out with them, or we have to get 3 quotes. That's pretty normal. But just to say, please find details and images about the 2 items attached. I was like, yes. And the other thing is, like, I'm okay as long as you're like, we talked to somebody else and here's what they thought. We talked to another conservator, right? And they had these thoughts. I mean, I read the treatment proposal and agreed with everything. That's what I would have done, except for like one small thing, which was I'd have to see the book in person because there may be a different way I would approach one of the books. So conservators, like, you can either talk about the elephant in the room, which is like, we looked at somebody else first, which is understandable. There are conservators in Atlanta and I'm not one of them. So that's pretty reasonable. I would expect them actually to have already contacted somebody. But then to not mention that, but still attach the stuff, it was weird. It was really weird. So either just let the conservator think they're the only one or kind of own it. But that was a strange one. Probably don't do that. That's how not to talk to a conservator. So that's just a recent experience I've had that was really strange. That was like, I would not recommend you guys do that. So thanks for listening to my rant. Super professional, I know. All right, well, it was great for me to do this with you guys. I had a lot of fun putting this together and executing it. And like I said, if you guys have any questions for me, my email address is below. And if you guys have anything in the future in your archive where like you, for the last however many years, have been like, I don't know anything about this book or paper preservation, conservation, whatever issue, or you're curious, if you want to email me your questions or your interests, I might be able to get with Taffy and come back next year or in a couple of years and do another talk for you guys on these topics. I think that would be really fun for me to do, and it would be hopefully useful for you guys. And so thanks for having me this time, guys. I appreciate it.